everything, why we're doing this event, and our goal for this call, as well as the awards. Thank you everybody again for your patience. So this has been an interesting year, obviously. 2020 was a year we shall never ever forget, and out of it, while we're developing the theme for this year, a lot of conversation was, well, last year was like almost like burning in the coals or burning in the fire. We were pushed to our extremes by having to work from home, by having to concept via Zoom like we're doing today, and we were pushed to try and improve our communications. And much of this, out of the conversation, somebody suggested, this is just like what it's like when you see hot glass being made, or metal work, or anything of that fashion, when you're in the forge and you're burning alive, and then out of it comes something incredibly creative, be it hot glass that makes a beautiful glass piece, or metal that turns into some beautiful piece of work. And so we developed this idea of creativity in flux. And so that's the theme for this year. It's also a theme that we've developed with our creativity, with our creative work that we've seen on the website, the call for entries poster, as well as what you'll see for the run of show for the awards itself. So an award season in flux, essentially. This has been an interesting award season. We had more entries than we've ever had in the last 10 years. So it was quite a number of great work to review, and our judges spent a good time with us last weekend reviewing it all. We won't be reviewing or talking about any of the work that was seen by our judges. That will be something we get to enjoy with the gala, and soon you'll find out what you won, whether it's gold or silver. Emails for that will be going out Friday, announcing the winners. And we feel very pleased, and we're very happy by all the pieces that were deserving of their awards. So our announcements will be sent out Friday. The Gala Awards itself will be on February 25th. So an email will be going out soon about that, and so please be watching out for it. We actually had 3 judges, and I'll name the judges and their background. On the call right now, we have Michael Rivera. Is that Rivera? Is that how you say it? Thank you. Michael Rivera with the Marketing Store. He's the Chief Creative Officer and Digital Creative and Shopper. We also had Blaine Loyd. Oh, Blaine just joined us. Hi, Blaine.
Hey, how's it going?
He's with HLK, previously Tracy Locke, excuse me, creative director, copywriter, and he's based in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm sorry, Michael, you're based in Chicago, Illinois. And our third judge, who's unable to make it call tonight, Giovanni Gutierrez, I think that's how you say it. He's with Tinsley Advertising out of Miami, Florida. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight. But we do have our 2 esteemed judges with us this evening, Blaine and Michael. And they are going to be talking about trends, 2021 or 2020 trends, or 2021 trends. Where is great advertising headed? This is a subject that is something that comes out of the interesting experience of judging. Is you do start to see trends. You start to see things that other markets are doing, your own market perhaps. And it's interesting to kind of see where things are evolving and how things are changing, especially during COVID. Like I mentioned, we've been having to use Zoom a lot for concepting with our teammates, as well as planning for things ahead. So Zoom has definitely had a major effect. That's certainly a trend. But there are other trends as well. And so we thought perhaps Michael and Blaine could kind of shed some light for us a little bit on these things. And so this is a panel conversation. It's between Michael and Blaine, and we'll ask the questions. If you have any questions of your own, feel free to send them in the chat, and we will certainly ask them. Again, this is about trends. It's not about, we're not talking about any work that was reviewed by the judges at all. we'll keep that separate. You'll get to enjoy that at the actual awards gala. So Michael and Blaine, thank you for being here this evening. We really appreciate your time, and I'll throw it to Alicia to start the first question.
Okay, great. So before we get into the actual trends, can you guys just give us a little bit of background information about how you got into the creative world and kind of where you are now?
Sure. All right. First, I just would love to thank the ad community in Charlotte for just, inviting us in to judge this award. You have a tremendously vibrant creative community, and it really showed in the work. And I know we're not supposed to, speak specifically to anything, and I won't. But I just want to say it was a real honor, and it was a heck of a lot of fun judging this show. And it'll be great to sort of connect and talk with you all today. So from my perspective, I'm sort of a unicorn creative director, kind of a full stack creative director. I started out, making TV commercials and, print and outdoor and all the traditional media. And then I went into sort of a rapid evolution as things began to change in our industry. So I've led creative in traditional agencies, shopper agencies, purely digital agencies, and large agencies within like a WPP network and an Omnicom network, as well as medium-sized, independents. And I've also been an agency. I've been fortunate enough to be an agency owner as well, which was a lot of fun. Currently in the agency I'm at right now at the marketing store, it's highly mobile and really driven by digital engagement. And we are, focused on, I'm fortunate enough to have clients like T-Mobile, PetSmart, Nissan, and BP. So I have to drop those, but they really inform a lot of the work and a lot of my perspective on the industry right now. Blaine?
Hey, yeah, echoing what Michael said, huge honor to be talking to you guys. Huge honor to get to look at your work, much less, be able to judge it. And overall, it's a super exciting experience, and it's kind of a fun way to get to see a city. Even though this time I didn't actually get to go there, I feel like I got to get to know it through the work. So as for me personally, I am originally from Memphis, Tennessee. So I've kind of been working in sort of an isolated market, all independent agencies. And I got sort of weirdly lucky in the sense that, no one told me advertising was a job you could do. Even in college, the person that you pay to tell you what you should do, I was pursuing English and they were just like, yeah, maybe you could be an English teacher. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. And they were like, yeah, that's basically your only option. So I never really knew that. I graduated with English, and then I kind of just sort of made my own way. I was in a band, I toured a lot. I did a lot of different things that were a lot of work that didn't pay like work. And then somehow or another, I stumbled into web design and taught myself how to code, and basically became a web developer at a company called AutoZone, has a headquarters in Memphis. And I was working there with a lot of fellas in their late to mid 50s with mustaches, and kind of trying to get AutoZone.com up off the ground and sort of explain to them what it was at the same time. And a friend of mine across the street got a job at an ad agency, and he was like, you need to come out and have a beer with us. And I had a beer with him, and everybody there was cool and funny and smart. And I was like, oh shit, I'm in entirely the wrong job. So it's been a couple of years transitioning over into advertising, and was lucky enough to be a copywriter at a lot of agencies in Memphis before. I'm currently living in Dallas. I moved here for the job at Tracy Lock, and now I am working virtually in St. Louis for HLK. And so most of what I work on currently is health insurance and some agriculture work, and then a little bit of everything that comes in the door.
Awesome. Feels like you guys have kind of almost touched it all through your experience.
Sometimes.
So getting a little bit more personal with your work, do you guys have any like favorite types of creative projects to work on, like television or web or social media campaigns, anything like that, and any specific clients that you really gravitate towards?
Well, for me, it's the opportunity to sort of do a makeover You know, when you see that client and that assignment, that brand come in where you know that creativity is going to have, you know, has the potential to really impact things and change people's perspectives and behavior toward the brand. And, you know, as you said, Alicia, like, you know, today's sort of creative is broadly, you know, exposed to media platforms, media environments, digital platforms. And so it's, for me, it's really not specific. I mean, I do a lot of work in mobile and in digital right now, but you know, there's content creation that you do as a part of that. So you're pulling from that, you know, that creative DNA. There's event and experience that plays a part, you know, because things can have a lot of sort of tentacles. Brands want to create, you know, sort of these 360 experiences, and that's what consumers are looking for too. So for me, it really boils down to like what the ask is. Like I'm really, really hunger for like big change opportunities.
Yeah, I totally get. I would steal a lot of that. But I think for me, it almost comes down to I've been asked a lot, like, what are your favorite kind of clients and what are your favorite kind of work? And honestly, I mean, obviously, it sort of depends on a lot of factors that aren't those. For me, I've found more often than not, the more fun and exciting or sort of outside a client looks, actually working on them can be the exact opposite experience. Whereas a lot of time, a very like, oh, they're kind of boring, or what are you going to do in that area, can be wide open to have as much fun as you want. So for me, I'm always just looking for any opportunity to be different, to make ads that break through. It bugs me to make an ad or take a good idea and sort of get it to a place to where it's no longer like standing out, whether it makes you laugh, whether it makes you sad, whether it makes you both. You know, I think it needs to do something. I'm always looking for an opportunity to try to do that and not just sort of be like, well, we made something, you know.
I think there's also a selfish component in it of like wanting to learn, you know, because, and I think that's kind of why all of us are in this business in one way or another, is like, we don't want to just be in one lane. We want to continue to explore. Right. And so like an example for us is, you know, we're currently talking to a company that's developing a financial services platform, like, and it has to do with like trading. So super complex. Right. Mm-hmm. And I knew I was going to be, you know, the team, everybody was going to be like way underwater on this from a learning curve standpoint, but it's fascinating. And so that makes it interesting. And then you start to think how you can apply all the things that Blaine was just saying to it. And it's fun. And it's kind of like, it's fun again is like a mantra, you know, it's like, that's why we do the job, because it's always fun again.
Yeah, no, those are great answers. So thank you for a little bit of background, because we're going to get into more trends, but I kind of wanted to set the scene with kind of what you guys are used to and what you like to do. But I'll pass it to Elizabeth to take on the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. So with advertising evolving through a state of flux in the year 2020, what trends in advertising exploration were you most excited to see come about? Do you think these trends will translate well into 2021 and beyond, or were they simply a means of getting by in the midst of a pandemic?
I can jump in on that by just saying, like, I think anytime something major shakes up the universe, especially the whole world, the way we all live, the way we all see things, the initial reaction is everyone sort of has the same initial reaction. So if you think of like 9/11, you know, the post 9/11 spots were very of a theme, you know, very people coming together, people overcoming. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. I think what happens afterward is what's really fascinating to me, because in this situation, I mean, I think most of us have had our work experience turned upside down. The fact that I'm talking to you guys on a computer, you know, is a pretty obvious evidence of that, in the sense that we've had Zoom for years at my job, and I've never worked remote a 100th of the amount of time. I'm literally working remote full time now. So I think that changes everything. But with that, that opens a ton of doors in terms of not the most obvious, our world is changing, uncertain times kind of monologue, but in the, hey, this is a funny thing that when somebody's kid runs by in the background, that becomes a thing we can all identify with. Or I think all of those sort of like norms open up a lot of really fun doors for me in terms of how people change and how society changes.
I completely agree. And I think, in terms of like specific, evolutions in advertising, in the past year, I think there's a few that I've been thinking about. One is that, everyone sort of talks about personalization, and that sort of it's like the dialogue you have with brands, and it's the experience, right? I'm being served the content, the message that connects with me. And I think that's evolved in an interesting way, because I think personalization has become personal, because people have such, visceral reactions and connection to the pandemic, to, DE and I issues and equality overall. Like, there's some major themes, to Blaine's point, some major themes. And I think what's happening in advertising now is, it feels more personal, not just from a technical standpoint or, messaging strategy, but it needs, it's brands are trying to really land with people like from the heart. I think, due to how we're living, or how we've lived in a pandemic, social platforms have gone beyond sort of the, the basic and valuable utility of bringing people together, but now they're linked with commerce and with advertising, and even on a local level. And so now when you're scrolling through Instagram, or you're checking out some new videos on TikTok or whatever, which is like the endless time suck of all time, you can buy things, you're connected to commerce, and it's one swipe, it's one interaction away. I think that is a fairly quickly evolving theme. And I think, from a digital perspective, user interface design has become the brand. If it's a terrible experience, or if it's an experience that gets in your way, or doesn't give you the information you're looking for in a way that connects and that you can do in a fluid, through a fluid experience, that looks really bad on the brand. And so I think brands are taking those aspects of how they show up much more seriously. And we're definitely seeing it, in our clients.
Thank you. Those were awesome answers. I love this question because storytelling is such an important element within advertising. How do you think this pandemic has affected storytelling within advertising? Has it made the strategies behind how you attempt to connect with your target audience more complex, or simpler to figure out, or just different? How so?
You want to run with that one?
Sure, I'll jump. Yeah, okay. I'll jump on that grenade. You know what? I think storytelling has, and I feel the same way you do about storytelling and advertising, and from a brand standpoint. I think it has to come from a truer place now. So storytelling isn't sort of like, well, what is the story we want to tell? Where is the magical place we want to take people to? That's still a component in it, and it should be. I mean, it's the fantasy of participating in the reality that brands create. But I think that the stories, because of all the things we've been talking about, need to feel authentic and true, and that puts brands in a challenging position, because it's not easy, it's complex, right? So if you're going to tell that story, like, where does humor play a part? Where does earnestness play a part? How much of the stage does the brand actually take up in the storytelling? And then, you also have every brand on the planet sort of trying to tell the same story. So then how do you differentiate? And because that's what you have to do for your survival as a company and as a brand, within an environment where, and a lot of the messaging, by the way, isn't bad. It's all really good stuff. So, it's a tough environment to be competitive in from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah. And I think I'd like to add too, like, it's hard to tell a story when you don't know how it's going to end, in terms of I was literally looking at something the other day where like somebody tweeted, or I tweeted back in April, like, man, I hope this is done by the end of the summer or something like that. And I'm like, here I am. It's, almost February 2021. And still, like, we just don't know exactly how all of this works, and I think that is interesting to some degree. Sort of like I said last time, I think finding ways to be authentic to the new reality. But also, I think there is going to be a certain buildup of, I think, human contact and human interaction that I think will trump just about everything when this is all done with. Again, everything was really trending a lot in my work toward a lot of brand activations, a lot of tactile experiences, a lot of human connection. And then we kind of had all of that taken off the table. And so I think coming back, I'm no trend analyst, but I think a lot of just like, it's to the point to know where we've been in this so long that sometimes I'll see people on TV and go, oh, it's weird seeing people on a subway without masks or whatever it is. And so I think there is going to be sort of a release valve that gets hit. And I think a lot of the stories will probably go there, and hopefully be a lot of fun.
Yeah, those are great points. And I'm with you. I feel like the mask police. I'm like, what are you doing? And then I'm like, this was filmed in 2010, Alicia. Don't. So I kind of want to touch on the D&I. Michael brought up D&I a little bit. That's obviously become a really important and prevalent topic for a lot of organizations, even internally. So over the years, and especially, the past few years, can you guys speak to any examples of trends that were specific to that D&I storytelling efforts that you've seen, or just share some examples of those pieces that inspired you recently?
It's funny you bring it up, because we kind of had a conversation about this during judging. Just a random thing, I went to 3% last year, which was very good in terms of sort of like reinforcing to me how much I have to learn in terms of being more inclusive and being more open-minded and being open to learning. But just sort of in general, I think what we've seen in the last year or so, especially currently living in Dallas, where there has been such a major fallout of somebody, not understanding that it's, 2020, or, it's not 1960. And so I think it's a very, in some ways, painful experience for some, but I also think it's an exciting time, because I've never seen so much focus everywhere I work and everyone I talk to on making this a priority, on making more inclusive spaces, whether you're at your agency, but also my clients. It's really across the board. Like, I do a lot of agricultural ads, and every agricultural ad I did 5 or 6 years ago was a guy that looked like me wearing overalls or some sort of flannel on a farm by himself, standing by a tractor. And now they're like, these ads need to feature women. There are women organizations. These ads need to feature other types of people than just, the typical farmer. And I think if it's made it all the way to the fields of Iowa, I think we're in a place where it's actually starting to affect change everywhere. And I think that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I one of the coolest aspects of this is that it's been so immediate, especially on like the big media platforms. You've seen all the major brands step up almost immediately. And one of the things that's really landed with me recently is, when seeing TV commercials, or, commercials that show up during, on all the different streaming platforms, casting. And I think you could see it in the casting. And I think there's some brands that you would expect, but I would say the car industry as a category has completely done like a 180. I think the fast food industry and like social platforms, they've been ahead of the curve. So they kind of show up like, as they've always shown up, with a much broader, I guess, awareness. And then I think, there've been, little adjustments made, like even in the gaming industry. Like, I read something the other day about Farmville, and they've added, different hairstyles for their avatars, right? And so these are like just a couple little examples, but I think it's pervasive in our digital world, in our digital lives, and it's also happening on the big media platforms. And I find that really inspiring. And I think as much as we talk about, you know, the limitations or the negative aspects of our digital lives, like it's empowered the speed and precision of digital communications has really, you know, helped to make this happen, you know, much quicker than it ever could have happened at any other point in time.
Yeah, just to touch back on that too, it's like it's one of those things that I think a lot of people have wanted for a long time and just sort of seen very glacial move. Like it's a huge deal that, you know, Arby's had a gay couple buy a roast beef sandwich. Holy shit, where, you know, we're moving the country. And then now it feels like, again, I don't know how much of it is just sort of combination of everything throughout the world, having a lot more to do with everything than just advertising. But like now we're starting to see change happen. And when it starts happening, it happens fast. And to the point that, you know, like you are quickly can't act the way you did or used to, you know, you either get on board or you get left behind. And I think that's exciting. It can be scary to some people, but I think in our business, we should be very excited about it.
No, I totally agree with you guys. It's been kind of inspiring. I think that was a word that was used, but for me personally, and I think even just within Charlotte, you know, inclusion's been big. Maybe not even in the advertising world, but just, you know, societal with our neighbors, our communities. So that's great to hear from you guys. I want to jump into a specific trend. This is a question from me because I just love QR. So it's been said by me that 2020 was the year of the QR code. Popped up in a lot of places. Are there any really innovative examples that you guys have seen in any industries that you think could benefit more from QR integration?
This seems like your world.
You know what? The funny thing about QR codes is, you know, they were hot and interesting and you know, mysterious and cool, and everyone used them no matter what and threw them on everything, and then they sort of fell out of favor, and now they're back. And I think the really innovative thing about QR codes is they've sort of had a renaissance because they're just a really good tool. They're a basic digital tool. So I don't think, you know, I can't really, you know, pull out any specific like wow QR moments, but I think the applications are interesting, like especially in a contactless world. So like menus, you know, that's a big deal. You know, I think app downloads, like just kind of making that super easy and quick when you're engaged with an experience or you're at an event or you're seeing an ad. And I think, you know, the applications in, you know, continued application in like fast food and that sort of thing. But then I think healthcare is probably, you know, like a really primed space for the use of QR codes in terms of, you know, wayfinding, information, diagnosis, communication. And I think there's some parallels also with, and this is kind of getting out of advertising, I guess, but I think there's also some parallels with education, you know, for the same reasons. You can imagine like QR codes allowing you to download lesson plans or catch up lectures or, you know, notes or special content that you would add to something. And I think it would just get more robust in, you know, a college campus environment. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I was going to say a thing about the restaurants too. I mean, it was like finally the perfect use, you know, to I don't want to have to touch this dirty menu. But the other thing I'm thinking of is, again, I mean, the biggest thing to me is just, I remember when QR came out, everybody was like, oh shit, this is game changer, guys. First, you've got to download an app. I know. And then you'll open that app and then you'll point it at this thing and then it may tell you to do something, but who knows what. And I think everybody was just, for a hot minute there, everybody was very excited by the potential of this, to the point I remember a client asking if we could put a QR code on a billboard. And I was just like, that sounds deadly. But then it just sort of went away. And then I remember a strategist giving a big presentation on it, like maybe 2 years ago, going, guys, it's coming back. It's built into the operating system now. And I think it's still got a ways to go in the sense that they still kind of look like ugly hieroglyphs. But I would love to get to it. I love the idea of a physical call to action that takes you virtual. Like the idea that you can click a link in an email and, have that at your fingertips to remember what Zoom meeting I need to go to, or, that thing I wanted to buy on Amazon, but got busy and didn't click, buy. Whatever that is, but also just sort of like when you're working on print materials or working in sort of traditional media, which will always be around, this idea of instead of a long complicated URL or a weird vanity URL or trying to get cute URLs and just into something that you can always scan that maybe isn't quite as blocky and weird looking. If you could literally more of an AR touch, I guess, but the same idea of like hold this phone up to this ad and it will take you to the thing we want you to do, without having to put that Rorschach looking thing on there.
Yeah, and maybe even applications that just connect to a brand directly, right? So you already have an expectation. So there's a McDonald's logo, and that if you hit the QR, you're automatically placing an online order. Like there's no explanation necessary. Like really going to just like logo plus. And I think you would bring up something really interesting, Blaine, which is like, how do those get elevated? And I know when they first came out, it was sort of like, well, what is the shape? And then how far do you need to be away from it? And there were certain limitations. And I don't think that was fully explored. I think that's a really good point.
What if we could make the logo the QR? And then then the client could say, make the logo bigger. And you could say, well, okay, but you're going to,
right.
That's
it. It was like a special pixel,
Yeah, something. Again, nothing's impossible.
That's the 2021 trend. We found it. So we're done. I'm just kidding. Just to follow up that question, since we were touching on the service industry a little bit, there have been a few, different ways to advertise. Their whole business kind of changed for some people. Are there any specific trends within that you guys can talk to, and what you might predict moving forward for the service industry, whether that's, fast food, restaurants, bars, anything within that?
I feel bad for the service industry just in general. I mean, I think we need to think about how we treat the service industry just en masse, like full stop. That, basically that all these incredible people and places have had to really just, upend how they do things and figure out how to make it work. And, I've seen so many great places and services that just, did not make it through the first part of this. And I just genuinely think overall, we need to think about the margins by which we treat service, and also just think about, what are some ways that we can, set aside or some sort of way to keep these things going for, when something like this happens.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that, supporting local is a huge part of that. I think, I've seen a lot of brands here in Chicago, local restaurants, really getting smart about leveraging their social channels and making it easy for customers and really listening, right? So, these menu items are really great to take away. These are maybe a little too complicated, or they don't taste as great when I get them home. There's innovation in beverages and, just all sorts of things like that. So I think that's something where, the service industry can take their cues from big brands, because big brands in many ways are trying to, it's like digital, local, mobile, it's like big brands are trying to do that all the time. Well, in the service industry and kind of where this conversation is going, if you're talking to local or regional restaurants, for instance, they already have the local part nailed. And that's a competitive advantage because you understand your market, you understand what works, you understand what doesn't work, you understand, the differences between like what the tastes are in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. And so without going down a strategist's, wormhole on this, I think there's a real strength there in looking at how some of the bigger brands are working. And I think digital allows you to apply a lot of the same tactics. It's just on your platform.
Yeah. And to add on to that too, like one thing, I do agree with all of that, but one thing else I think you can do, I think one thing about this whole world is that it's, and by that I mean the last 9 months, is that it's really taken a lot of the surprise out of life. Everything is very intentional. Like we were talking about, oh, it used to be at work, we would say, hey, do you want to go get a beer after work? And you'd be like, yeah, fuck it. I'll go get a beer. That's part of the language. But you may just be like, hey, I'm going to go get a beer with you guys. Now it is like, hey, at 4:45 to 5:15, we're going to have beers and these 7 attendees will be there. And it's also intentional and so unfun in that sense. And I think not that getting together virtually isn't a good time, but I think the things I've seen in service that really stand out is people that put surprises back into this. There's a local brewery here in Dallas area that I love. And, they turn, instead of curbside pickup, into sort of just this rolling through party, and they're always like giving away just little dumb things that they, like, hey, we're just giving everybody this, or we're giving a sticker, or we made this mask, or whatever it is. It's like tchotchkes. But again, they treat it like a party. There's music playing. You feel good about it. Like I just bought some craft beer and I'm going to love drinking it. And I supported a local business. And I've seen other places that were like, throwing in toilet paper or disinfectant or just doing anything to sort of go above and beyond, here's your food that probably would have been better were you able to eat it in the restaurant. But, this is what you get.
Those are all good points. And we can kind of speak to the craft beer thing too. Obviously we have over 100 in Charlotte. So that was definitely a thing everybody wanted to do after work. So supporting local is a little bit harder now, but we try. Yeah. We had a few questions come in, so I'm going to let Elizabeth go over those. They're not necessarily related to service industry, but some really good questions.
Hop over here. Let's see. So our first question from the attendee: how do you see people keeping alive true collaboration and creative concepting, which thrives off interpersonal connection and the remote environment without degrading quality? How do you adjust creative direction and department management approaches when working remotely to provide the best creative environment for your teams? Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's a super hard question. I think the biggest thing you got to do right off the bat is not compare it to last year's creative direction and last year's collaboration. I think the biggest thing I've seen, and again, having, had to change jobs in the middle of this too, and working with a bunch of people I've literally never breathed the same air with, it does sort of free you in a certain way of thinking, oh, well, this would be better if we were doing this. I've never been to the office that employs me now. And so my whole world with this job is the same way I'm talking to you guys. And so I think to some degree, that actually made it a lot easier to come in and collaborate at this new agency than it was at the agency I was working physically at, and then everybody went virtual, because it always felt like there was something missing. And I think to a large degree, I don't know that we can say as good as or better than or whatever, but I do think letting go of like, I can't fairly judge things until I stick them on the wall and everybody steps back and we go, oh, this is the direction that stands out. I think there are a lot of new tools being developed to sort of emulate that stuff, but in general, there's a lot of great things that you don't have in terms of, working in the office. You don't have people that are thinking about, I need to get home at 5 today and the traffic's going to suck and I've got this going on. And you don't have, people who are just literally tired because they've been, sitting at their desk for 8 hours under, lights or whatever. And I think there's a lot of different things about it, but I think the most important thing you've got to do is just sort of, let yourself off the hook for it not being what it was, and think of what are the advantages and what can it be.
I think it allows us to really kind of fine tune our creative work style and our workflow. I mean, as a creative, like the open plan seems cool. And how many agencies we've worked in where there's a pool table or there's a tapper or there's, stadium seating or whatever it is. Those things are all, they're fine and cool or whatever. But as a creative, like you want a mixture, you want this perfectly, number one, there's time, right? I'm really creative. I can get in my zone. I can get in my flow in the morning, or I can do it that around lunch, or you know what, I'm really a night person, so I really don't get going to like 4 o'clock anyway. That's why I'm the one who turns off the agency lights, you know, whatever. So there's time, which now we can control much more easily and without judgment, by the way. And then you can also control the volume, right? So back to the open plan thing, like you can have your quiet space, you know, you block out your calendar or you opt out of the meeting, and now you can really like focus on the idea, on the craft, on exploration. And I think coming out of this, like right now, like, I mean, I think, you know, Blaine makes a lot of great points. Like it ain't ideal. And the socializing is hugely important, right? And from my perspective, that's massively important from a team culture standpoint and a creative culture standpoint. And so we work really hard to create, you know, these pseudo connections where we're, you know, having events and get-togethers and all these channels for us to connect, and people are taking advantage of them. But nothing, you know, is a substitute for, you know, for that taco after work or whatever it is. So I think it's great. I think we're gonna. I mean, I don't think what we're doing right now is great. I think we're gonna end up somewhere really great for creative folks, because it's going to give us all that flexibility, and that's really power for the creative mind. And I think the tools are amazing. And from our standpoint, like we've been using, you know, I mean, you know, name the, you know, the tools like mural collaboration tools and, you know, Sketch and Slack, of course, and Protopie and all. And we're constantly reevaluating and changing, by the way, like every 6 months. So the tools are there. Like I don't have any worries about the tools enabling us to collaborate and create at a high level. And I'm not seeing any fall off in craft.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it too, I mean, we had what, 1,000 years to learn how to come up with an idea together, sitting in the same space, and we've had, you know, 5, 10 tops years of virtual collaboration, and really all of us really engaging in it full time for 9 months or so. You know, I think give it time and see what comes of it. And also just a generation of people who are more digitally native, as we love to say in marketing talk. So I genuinely think that it's up to us what we make of it. You know, I do love personal interaction as much as the next guy, but I also love not having to listen to 3 people talk about a show that I haven't watched yet and like, shut up on spoilers, you know, and being able to think and write and deep think, turn off, you know, sound or whatever, or listen to my music and not have to feel like I'm in an open environment that keeps getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So even when, you know, COVID-free world, the one thing I love is that this has sort of opened it up. Pretty much everyone I've talked to of like, hey, yeah, I'm only going to come into the office X number of days a week, or I'm going to work from home today because that fits my work-life balance better, you know, and I think that's great for all of us.
I think there's also the advantage of, you know, like it works both ways for talent having access to, like, all the agencies are now closer to you because you can sort of work anywhere. And as an agency, so from my perspective, you know, I'm recruiting all over the place now where I might not have done it the same way before. And the conversation doesn't end in, would you be willing to move to Chicago? You know, as great a city as it is, and as big a mistake as you're going to make not moving here. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? Like, it's awesome for creatives because you can stay in your, like, again, it's all about like these comfort zones, these sweet spots, you know, of where like you are at your best. So if you're great, you know, in Montana and you got to get your 130 days of fly fishing in, but you still want to be a copywriter in a big market, well, that's possible now. And now it's not, you're not trying to convince everybody like that it can work because everybody's seen it work for nearly a year. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. I know Zoom fatigue is very real, but it's beautiful to see people adapt and find positive ways to work around it. Let's see, we have one more question from attendee. Let's see. What trends do you see in new business pitches in the COVID and post-COVID era?
Like new business RFPs that are trending, or like, or just sort of the types of pitches? Like, how should I interpret that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Michael, you seem to have something.
Well, I mean, I think obviously what's changed is you're not having in-person dog and pony pitches. And that's a massive investment from an agency standpoint. New businesses already and it doesn't matter what size agency you are. It's a percentage of your resources that you're putting against it. And from a creative standpoint, it can often be, disproportionate. We're early in and we're the last ones out. So there's that. I think pitching has become more efficient. During COVID, I've got a pitch going on right now that is a global pitch. So we're working with a Paris office, a London office, and a Chicago office together. So when I get off this call, it's obviously the time zones are going to be out of whack for a Zoom meeting, but we can still collaborate on where things need to be tightened up. So when folks get on the call tomorrow, or on the Zoom tomorrow, like we're all on the same page, and that's possible. And I think that sort of efficiency isn't something that you would have had before. That would just be such a time suck, and just the logistics of everything. I also think that from a pitch standpoint, clients are starting to see the efficiency of RFPs and maybe not needing to go all the way to a creative pitch. And, agencies, and I'll include my own, we are a little more cautious. We're cautious to say, hey, check out the website. There's a lot of great work that shows what we do, and we'd love to do it for you. And an RFP is more about, like, how would you structure your teams? How would you approach this? Do you have experience in our category? And stuff like that. So I think they're evolving in a good way. I hope that answers the question. That was a tough question.
It is, because it also, I think, is pretty subjective. I think one thing I've noticed on pitches, and I'm just thinking of the 2 I worked on since Christmas, and there's so many before that, but they do seem to be getting faster, but that seems to always be the truth. So, the amount of time, like the last one I worked on, I literally had 4 or 5 days tops to turn it around. But I think also inside of that, I'm also seeing, and what I think my agency is seeing, and sorry, Chicago, but this is pretty good news for people working in St. Louis and Charlotte, is that because of what you were saying earlier about talent no longer being, completely for big cities, like, only the cream of the crop works in the New Yorks. I think cities like Charlotte, cities like St. Louis, Cincinnati, Memphis, all my other brothers and sisters in the non-gigantic cities are starting to see agencies rise in prominence and get invited to pitches that they probably might not have earlier, because I think a lot of those doors are just sort of opening up, and a lot of those old perceptions are, shifting some more.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'm going to jump on your wagon there. I led creative at an agency in Des Moines, Iowa, and we had clients like, Michelin. Yeah. We won LG business. And one of the things that I really left that experience with was, it was difficult in some cases, from a talent recruitment standpoint, but there was also a lot of really good talent, that was native to those areas. And I think that's happening more and more, where people are making the decision to say, listen, I want to stay close to what I love, and so I'm going to live here and make it happen. And I think agencies and companies are. So anyway, I just want to jump on that, because I don't think that New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, Austin, and Boston are the end of the world by any stretch. And I've lived it, so I really believe it. Every market can be, great.
Awesome, thank you. Let me pop over here. This seems to be kind of a trend now in the conversation, as to how did pitches change during COVID era and, virtual pitching. How did the shift of the marketing industry going virtual almost overnight affect your work and your clients' requests? And do you see any benefits, and I think y'all have answered this, in this virtual marketing world that we're all currently working in?
Honestly, I worked on clients that are out of town. I worked on my last job. T-Mobile was in Seattle while I was in Dallas, and we had our whole hours set up to mirror their Pacific time. So I came into work late and left work late. It was like it honestly changed nothing. In terms of, it changed how we worked. It changed very little with how much we interfaced with them, except for surprisingly Zoom. Everybody Zooming, them Zooming from home, no longer being at T-Mobile headquarters. We started to see each other's faces more than we did when we were in two different offices, and we would just be lazy and speakerphone it most of the time. And as you guys know, I mean, when you've got your camera on, it changes the conversation, and it can be very weird to not have the camera on, or like I kind of, your client will notice if you make a face when somebody says something. They're like, "What do you not like about that, Blaine?" And I tend to do that. So I found it to be in a lot of ways sort of a better thing in that, it sort of leveled everybody. And again, it's hard to seem too intimidating when I'm seeing your dog in the background, or, your kitchen that you're in the middle of painting, and everybody was just making it work. And I don't know, if anything, it felt more collaborative because it was sort of an equalizer.
Yeah, I think there's a huge point there in that it just makes it more relationships more real. And creatively, that's the space we're looking for. Like, we want to get beyond all the pomp and circumstance and just have a conversation about something we really feel, that we feel strongly about, the ideas. And we want to have, an honest conversation, and not have it be the end of the world, and not having to be, sort of standing up straight and making the right move, and, doing everything on cue. And in some cases, if you're not like a super comfortable presenter, I think it's provided the opportunity for folks to be a little bit more like in control, which allows you to sort of build that confidence and build that muscle of presenting with clients. And then all the stuff Blaine just said, like, everyone understands, hey, we're just people here. So that's kind of cool.
No, those are all good points. And I definitely appreciate the flexibility that we've kind of seen come about over the past, it's basically almost been a year. So that's insane. Kind of want to shift to the big game, because it's the big game. It's coming up. Have you guys been surprised with some of the corporate decisions to forego their advertising and reallocate that money? I know that's kind of a new thing that's popped up, that news.
I don't know. I mean, it felt like it was sort of trending that way pre-COVID anyway. I think as brands are trying to stand out and differentiate and position themselves, there was a certain point after the excess of like the internet boom era of Super Bowl ads, which was kind of its, last biggest heyday, I think, when everybody was like, hey, maybe spending, $5 million on this spot, showing a bunch of cats being herded or whatever it is, whatever wacky idea we had. And I love Super Bowl ads more than anything else, or big game ads. But I think in general, it was sort of trending toward where I remember a lot of brands trying to make noise online with our not really a Super Bowl spot. I think the big side of it is just sort of finding a way to put, the right way to say this, finding a way to sort of have your brand stand for something beyond just, not spending money or spending a bunch of money or having a lot of fun or whatever. I think is actually having your brand do something for someone else is, feels like the right move this year, beyond anything else. And even though it in of itself is sort of a stunt, a lot of them are putting out spots that this is not our Super Bowl spot. If it helps somebody, if some money goes to a worthy cause, then sure.
Wow, those are awesome points.
Sorry.
I don't know what I can really add to that. I mean, I think I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised either. But I think maybe for a slightly different reason. I think a lot of brands are realizing that you don't necessarily have to have the spot to win the Super Bowl. And I think obviously, digital and social and mobile play into that, because you can live in sort of the hashtagged world around that and all the channels that accompany it, and really rich conversations and content and opportunities for access to content and access to, offers and whatever it is. Like, that's all happening around the big event anyway. And then I also think that, I love commercials. I love being on a set, but that is awareness advertising. And we are all evolving to engagement advertising in one way or another, right? Even if it's engaging with a commercial, And so I think that's slowly, like, it's slowly melting a little bit with the Super Bowl. Like, if the most important thing about it is that it may, you want to see who wins on the USA Today list. It's just as digestible as any other, fragment of content. And the good stuff is good and it's great. It's awesome. But I just think the Super Bowl is playing less of a part. And I think when you look at the investments that you make in creativity, boy, you can, and you'll see it in this Super Bowl. There's some brands that are planning some really interesting stuff that's has nothing to do with commercials. And there's also some great commercials, I mean, like DDB here in Chicago is doing a spot, or maybe it's not DDB, but like whoever has Coors is doing a spot that's like it's like an experiment. They're calling it like a targeted dream. And so they're going to ask people they've created all this content where they take you to Coors country. And so they're going to ask you and they've worked with, like, I don't know, neuroscientists or whatever. Like, you guys think I'm nuts, but this is actually going to happen. And then they're going to ask people to go through the experiment and see if you've actually dreamt of the mountains. And then it's going to have like all this connective, touch points to all their social channels, to the brand itself, to offers and other experiences. And that'll be a commercial too. So it's evolving. I think it's the Wild West in the Super Bowl now. I don't think it knows what it wants to be. I think you've got Huggies, you got diapers, being advertised, which kind of just makes it like, well, all right, I'm looking for the relevance there. I think that's a real cool creative challenge. So that'll be fun to watch.
It's good to get your feedback. That's all interesting to hear for me. So thank you for that. I'm going to let John take it over since we're right at 6:30. But thank you guys so much. This has been fun for us to see you guys again.
Yeah. Honored to talk to you guys. And again, really, really exciting to get to see the work in Charlotte. And the only bummer about this whole experience is that I didn't get to come and hang out and drink some of that beer that I have had before and want more of. Because I think I've only been to like 5 or 6 of those 100 breweries. So I've got a lot of work.
We'll get you the beer pass. We'll send that to you.
Please do.
It's been a great experience. This panel's been a great experience. Super smart idea. I hope folks got a little something out of it. Blaine and I could talk to each other for, I think, hours on end probably. And you throw some beers in there and then it gets really dangerous. But this has just been great. So thank you. Thanks for the invitation. And it's been great to be a part of it.
Hey, John, you're on mute.
We have one. Thank you, Alicia. What is the X factor in making work that deserves an award? We're all looking for it. Yeah.
I think for me, it's unless Blaine, did you have something? Did you want to jump on that?
I have so many thoughts, so I'm gonna let you go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Time to come.
You know what? I think award-winning work is work that you sort of see and feel the idea as you're seeing the execution. Like, it dawns on you that, whoa, there's an idea here. And you're looking at it critically, right? So you're going in looking for like what's right and what's wrong. So you're hyper aware of that. But award-winning work is work that connects on a human level, right? So you feel something, even if it's a connection. It's not like it necessarily needs to be emotional, but it's like, if the ad understands what it feels like to be standing in a basement full of water in the right moment at the right time, and you either laugh about it or you feel smart because you're going to figure out how to solve it quickly or whatever. Like if all that chemistry happens together and there's an idea and it hits you in an unexpected way, like that's, to me, that's the magic. And you oftentimes see work where it looks great, but that's it. And that's like a really great looking car with no engine. And in other cases, there's an awesome engine. So there's a really cool idea, but it's not crafted in a way that's going to engage anyone. It's not going to make them feel interested, and it's not going to make them feel good about spending their time with that brand.
Yeah. To piggyback on what Michael said, I mean, I think the craft has to be in a place that the concept just comes right through and hits you right here in the heart. Because I've been lucky enough to judge a few times, and I usually work with people that I think are amazing, like Michael and Gio. And I've found in a weird way that you'll all three have different ideas about things. You're like, oh, that one didn't, or I wasn't seeing this, or I did this. And I think the most honest emotional expression of just saying, like, it's what, for whatever reason, this ad got me. It reminded me of my uncle. It made me sad. It made me happy. It made me laugh. And I think that's what every judge I've ever been lucky enough to talk to really responds to that. Like, oh, really? I can see that, because I think that's an honest reaction that isn't about, fonts and colors and clever wordplay. If it hits you in some sort of emotional way, I think that's the best thing you could ever ask for. And, there's a ton of stuff in there about craft. And there's a ton of stuff in there about, novelty and being new and being exciting and using new technology in the right way or in a new way. But at the end of it all, I mean, yeah, do I feel anything? Did this connect with me?
That's a great answer. I think both of you guys gave great answers. So thank you so much. That's always been a question we've heard from students as well as young professionals. And so everybody's trying to figure out what the X factor is. And I think you're right. It takes so many right things to make it something, amazing. And oftentimes it's having the right chemistry with people you work with, clients, the project. It could be so many things, but everything it makes a, how's that song go? It takes a two to make a thing go right. It takes a team to make a thing go right.
You got a hit on your hands.
And craft does play a huge part in this. Like, and we both kind of touched on it, I think, but the design, the art direction, the copy, the photography, the kerning and the leading, the font choice, the font pairing. All this stuff, it really, really matters. Really matters, because we're all looking for a Rolls Royce with hand stitched, like something that's been built by hand from the ground up. And oh my gosh, that's fantastic. It really matters. And you only give yourself more opportunities for the idea to be discovered if it's well crafted. Like ideas are ideas, right? They that's a silly thing to say. Ideas are a subjective thing, right? So you're taking a chance no matter what. Like no idea is guaranteed. And half of the most famous campaigns were hated by half the people, right? So you kind of have to take the idea and go, all right, we're committed to this direction, this idea. And our team that is the team to make it go right, we've agreed, this is our direction. So you put that aside. Now you, as the creative, have to craft what you've all agreed with to the highest possible level, whether it's a post, whether it's content, whether it's, a film, a commercial, a print ad, whatever it is. But, I don't feel bad about bending your ear past time on this one, because it's hugely important. And especially when you start in the industry, do not let that get past you. Aping another look, copying another look, mimicking another look or something is a starting point. You have to craft it and you have to put yourself into it 100%. Every little pixel matters and every syllable matters.
Well, I'm really proud to say that there's quite a few Rolls Royces that will be seen soon at our Gala Awards. And I just want to say thank you both for judging our Charlotte's Awards and taking the time to talk this evening. You've been very everything you said has been really touched on so many points of what we do in our industry. So thank you very much, and we really appreciate it. Guys, we're going to close this evening. Thank you everybody who came and joined our call this evening. Again, watch for your emails on Friday, and just want to say good night and thank you again, Michael and Blaine.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.